Alright everyone, I've had a few people request that I actually complete this article. They may be insane, but no one else is making requests, so here we go. Let's finish this article. Background and history. Contemporary. The contemporary history of ASMR began on 19th of October 2007 on a discussion forum for health-related subjects at a website called Study Health. A 21-year-old registered user with the handle OKWhatever submitted a post describing having experienced a specific sensation since childhood, comparable to that stimulated by tracing fingers along the skin, yet often triggered by seemingly random and unrelated non-haptic events, such as watching a puppet show or being read a story. Replies to this post indicated that a significant number of other people had experienced the sensation which OKWhatever described, also in response to witnessing mundane events. The interchanges precipitated the formation of a number of web-based locations intended to facilitate further discussion and analysis of the phenomenon, for which there were plentiful anecdotal accounts, yet no consensus-agreed name, nor any scientific data or explanation. Earlier, Austrian writer Clemens J. Setz suggests that a passage from the novel Mrs. Dalloway, authored by Virginia Woolf and published in 1925, describes something distinctly comparable. In the passage from Mrs. Dalloway cited by Setz, a nursemaid speaks to the man who is her patient, deeply, softly, like a mellow organ, but with a roughness in her voice like a grasshopper's, which rasped his spine deliciously and sent running up into his brain waves of sound. According to Setz, this citation generally alludes to the effectiveness of the human voice and soft or whispered vocal sounds specifically as a trigger of ASMR for many of those who experience it, as demonstrated by the responsive comments posted to YouTube videos that depict someone speaking softly or whispering, typically directly to a camera. Evolutionary. There are no known sources for any evolutionary origins for ASMR, since it is yet to be identified as having biological correlations. Even so, a significant majority of descriptions of ASMR by those who experience it compare the sensation to that precipitated by receipt of tender physical touch, providing examples such as having their hair cut or combed. This has led to the conjecture that ASMR might be related to the act of grooming. For example, David Huron, professor of the School of Music at Ohio State University, states, "The ASMR effect is clearly strongly related to the perception of non-threat and altruistic attention and has a strong similarity to physical grooming in primates who derive enormous pleasure, bordering on euphoria, when being groomed by a grooming partner, not to get clean, but rather to bond with each other." Imaging subjects' brains with fMRI as they reported experiencing ASMR tingles suggests support for this hypothesis because brain areas such as the medial prefrontal cortex associated with social behaviors including grooming and the secondary somatosensory cortex associated with the sensation of touch were activated more strongly during tingle periods than control periods. Media. Videos. The most popular source of stimuli reported by subjects to be effective in triggering ASMR is video. Videos reported being effective in triggering ASMR generally fall into two categories: intentional and unintentional. Intentional media is created by those known as ASM artists to trigger ASMR in viewers and listeners. Unintentional media is that made for other reasons, often before attention was drawn to the phenomenon in 2007, but which some subjects discovered to be effective in triggering ASMR. Examples of unintentional media include British author John Butler and American painter Bob Ross. In Ross's episodes of his television series The Joy of Painting, both broadcast and on YouTube, his soft, gentle speaking mannerisms and the sound of his painting and his tools trigger the effect in some viewers. The work of stop-motion filmmaker PES is also often noted. Binaural recording. Some ASMR video creators use binaural recording techniques to simulate the acoustics of a three-dimensional environment. reported to elicit in viewers and listeners the experience of being in proximity to actor and vocalist. Binaural recordings are usually made using two microphones, just like stereo recordings. However, in binaural recordings, the two microphones tend to be more specifically designed to mimic ears on humans. In many cases, microphones are separated the same distance as ears are on humans, and microphones are surrounded by ear-shaped cups to get similar reverb as human ears. Viewing and hearing such ASMR videos that comprise ambient sound captured through binaural recording has been compared to the reported effect of listening to binaural beats, which are also alleged to precipitate pleasurable sensation and the subjective experience of calm and equanimity. Binaural recordings are made specifically to be heard through headphones rather than loudspeakers. When listening to sound through loudspeakers, the left and right ear can both hear the sound coming from both speakers. In contrast, when listening to sound through headphones, the sound from the left earpiece is audible only to the left ear, and the sound from the right earpiece is audible only to the right ear. In producing binaural media, the sound source is recorded by two separate microphones, placed at a distance comparable to that between two ears, and they are not mixed, but remain separate in the final medium, whether video or audio. Listening to binaural recording through headphones simulates the binaural hearing by which people listen to live sounds. For the listener, this experience is categorized by two perceptions. Firstly, the listener perceives themselves as being near the performers and location of the sound source. Secondly, the listener perceives what is often reported as a three-dimensional sound. This means the listener can perceive both the position and distance of the source of the sound relative to them. Reception. On the 12th of March 2012, Stephen Novella, Director of General Neurology at the Yale School of Medicine, published a post about ASMR on his blog Neurologica. Regarding the question of whether ASMR is a real phenomenon, Novella said, "In this case, I don't think there is a definitive answer, but I am inclined to believe that it is. Several people seem to have independently experienced and described it with fairly specific details. In this way, it's similar to migraine headaches. We know they exist as a syndrome primarily because many different people report the same constellation of symptoms in natural history." Novella tentatively posited the possibilities that ASMR might be either a type of pleasurable seizure or another way to activate the pleasure response. However, Novella drew attention to the lack of scientific investigation into ASMR, suggesting that functional magnetic resonance imaging and transcranial magnetic stimulation technologies should be used to study the brains of people who experience ASMR in comparison to people who do not, as a way of beginning to seek scientific understanding and an explanation of the phenomenon. 4 months after Novella's blog post, Tom Stafford, a lecturer in psychology and cognitive sciences at the University of Sheffield, was reported to have said that ASMR might well be a real thing, but it's inherently difficult to research. Something like this is that you can't see or feel and doesn't happen for everyone. Stafford compared the current status of ASMR with the development of attitudes towards synesthesia, which he said for years was a myth, and then in the 1990s people came up with a reliable way of measuring it. Comparisons and associations with other phenomena. Synesthesia. Integral to the subjective experience of ASMR is a localized tingling sensation that many describe as similar as being gently touched, but which is stimulated by watching and listening to video media in the absence of any physical contact with another person. These reports have precipitated comparison between ASMR and synesthesia, a condition characterized by the excitation of one sensory modality by stimuli that normally exclusively stimulates another, as when the hearing of a specific sound induces the visualization of a distinct color, shape, or object, a type of synesthesia called chromesthesia. Thereby, people with other types of synesthesia report, for example, seeing sounds in the case of auditory visual synesthesia, or tasting words in the case of lexical gustatory synesthesia. In the case of ASMR, many report the perception of being touched by the sights and sounds presented in a video recording, comparable to visual tactile and auditory tactile synesthesia. Misophonia. Some people have sought to relate ASMR to misophonia, which means the hatred of sound, but manifests typically as automatic negative emotional reactions to particular sounds, the opposite of what can be observed in reactions to specific audio stimuli in ASMR. For example, those who suffer from misophonia often report that specific human sounds, including those made by eating, breathing, whispering, or repetitive tapping noises, can precipitate feelings of anger and disgust, in the absence of any previously learned associations that might otherwise explain those reactions. There are plentiful anecdotal reports by those who claim to have both misophonia and ASMR at multiple web-based user interaction and discussion locations. Common to these reports is the experience of ASMR to some sounds and misophonia in response to others. Frisson. The tingling sensation that characterizes ASMR has been compared and contrasted to frisson. The French word frisson signifies a brief sensation usually reported as pleasurable and often expressed as an overwhelming and emotional response to stimuli, such as a piece of music. Frisson often occurs simultaneously with piloerection, colloquially known as goosebumps, by which tiny muscles called erector pili contract, causing body hair, particularly that on the limbs and back of the neck, to erect or stand on end. Although ASMR and frisson are interrelated in that they appear to arise through similar physiological mechanisms, individuals who have experienced both describe them as qualitatively different, with different kinds of triggers. A 2018 fMRI study showed that the major brain regions already known to be activated in frisson are also activated in ASMR, and suggests that the similar pattern of activation of both ASMR and frisson could explain their subjective similarities, such as their short duration and tingling sensation. Sexuality. People who experience ASMR report feeling relaxed and sleepy after watching and listening to ASMR content. While some journalists and commentators have portrayed ASMR as intimate, they go on to say that there is no evidence of any connection between ASMR and sexual arousal. Well, that's good. In popular culture, contemporary art. Berlin-based artist Claire Tolan is a contemporary artist working with ASMR, having produced works for the CTM Festival, collaborated with noted composer Holly Herndon, and exhibited widely in North America and Europe. She has been working consistently in this genre since 2013. British artist Lucy Clout's single-channel video Shrugging Off, made for exhibition in March 2013, uses the model of online ASMR broadcasts as the basis for a work exploring the female body. Digital arts. The first digital arts installation specifically inspired by ASMR was the American journalist Julie White's called Touch Museum, which opened at the Young Projects Gallery on the 13th of February 2015 and comprised video screenings distributed through 7 rooms. Music. The music for Julie White's Touch Museum digital art installation was composed by Benjamin Wen under his pseudonym Deru, and was the first musical composition specifically created for live ASMR art events. Subsequently, artists Sophie Mallet and Mary Tosland created a live binaural sound of work composed of ASMR triggers broadcast by residents FM, the listenings for which advise the audience to listen with headphones for the full sensory effect. On the 18th of May 2015, contemporary composer Holly Herndon released an album called Platform, which included a collaboration with artist Claire Tolan named Lonely at the Top, intended to trigger ASMR. The track Brush from Holly Pester's 2016 album and poetry collection Common Rest featured artist Claire Tolan exploring ASMR and its relation to lullaby. Film. The haircutting scene of the film Battle of the Sexes deliberately included several ASMR triggers. Director Jonathan Dayton stated, "People work to make videos that elicit this response, and we were wondering, could we get that response in a theater full of people?" There have been 3 successfully crowd-funded projects, each based on proposals to make a film about ASMR. 2 documentaries and 1 fictional piece. None of these films have been completed. A short documentary about ASMR, Tertiary Sound, was selected to be screened at BFI London Film Festival of 2019. A scene featuring an ASMR content creator, Slight Sounds, was featured in the coming-of-age horror movie, We're All Going to the World's Fair. The film Discreet by Travis Matthews details the main character's phantom relationship with an ASMR artist. Television. On the 31st of July 2015, the BBC panel show Would I Lie to You featured an ASMR content maker as a guest as part of the This Is My Round, which resulted in the reveal of the person connected to comedian Joe Lysette. In 2018, ASMR, along with a number of its adherents, was featured in Netflix show Follow This for an episode titled The Internet Whisperers. During Super Bowl 53 in 2019, Anheuser-Busch broadcast an ASMR-themed commercial for its Michelob Ultra Pure Gold beer, where Zoe Kravitz uses ASMR techniques including whispering and tapping on a pure gold bottle into microphone. Rolling Stone described the commercial as an example of ASMR going mainstream. On the 3rd of May 2019, an episode of HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher, the host Bill Maher and the musician Moby discussed and demonstrated their use of ASMR as a coping mechanism. On the 16th of May 2019, episode of the CBS All Access series The Good Fight, titled The One About the End of the World, a law firm uses ASMR-style presentations to try to get through to a judge when they discover that he is an avid follower of the phenomenon. In an episode of Criminal Minds, Season 14, Episode 12, titled Hamlin, the BAU team hunts for an unknown suspect who uses ASMR to almost hypnotize children to leave their homes in the middle of the night to come meet up and voluntarily get into his van. Dr. Spencer Reed is sent a video from the unknown suspect of him making the auditory recording that he then plays from his van outside of each child's house to lure them out. Reading this is creepy now. In episode 5 of the sketch show Astronomy Club, the sketch show, there's a sketch about how an ASMR award show. In Season 7, Episode 8, the take-back of the sitcom Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Jake Peralta pretends to be an excessively soft-spoken and famous ASMR artist, helping pull off a reverse heist to put back stolen gems. In 2020, the R series of QI, the episode Rest and Recreation, featured a tidbit on playing with slime or watching others play with it as a form of relaxation, mentioning ASMR as an induced effect. Fictional and creative literature. In March 2013, the American weekly hour-long radio program This American Life broadcast the first short story on the subject of ASMR called A Tribe Called Rest, authored and read by American novelist and screenwriter Andrea Siegel. In 2001, in her novel A Brief Stay with the Living, Marie Darrieussecq describes this sensation in several pages. See, for example, pages 21 and 22, describing a visit to an ophthalmologist. Quotation, "His hands changing the lenses again, fingers on my chin, on my temples, slow and soft, yes, a soft sensation, a wave rising along my skull, shrinking my scalp, a process of head shrinking. My head, my brain, his fingers, letters, the absolute calm of the process. A soft, regular motion, something unbroken, which goes on, swinging, sleepy, to and fro, rocking. When I was little, at school, the teacher's voice creeping to the very top of my skull, my limp hands." Nonfiction. The Idiot's Guide series has one book on ASMR written by Julie Long and Ilse Blansert, aka ASMR artist The Water Whisperers, published in 2015. In 2018, Craig Richard, founder of ASMRUniversity.com, published his book Brain Tingles. Exhibitions. In 2020, the first major exhibition on ASMR, Weird Sensation Feels Good, took place at Arctis, Sweden's National Museum for Architecture and Design. Japanese media. ASMR had also gained more attention in Japanese culture, in which it shows the slow and steady mainstreaming of ASMR content in Japan. Japanese YouTuber Yukino Yumijuku has created 112 YouTube videos associated with the phenomenon for her channel, Japanese ASMR, including many traditional Japanese elements, such as the shamisen and susumi. And that ends the article.